Years ago, a seed was planted and cared for. We painstakingly nurtured it and weathered it against adversity until one day it blossomed and the fruits of our labor began to show. Today, millions have learned, shared, and been inspired by what our community has produced. We proudly served 21 million users from 204 countries in 2019. For our 85,000 technical articles, code samples, and videos, our 450,000 forum questions, and our highly anticipated conferences and events featuring keynote panels, live streams, and industry experts and influencers. We recognize and reward members for their dedication to the community. Through content contributions and mentorships, we ranked number 2,620 in the world with a reach of millions across our social media channels. Thanks to you, our global community of software and data developers grows stronger each day. For more information, visit us at csharpcorner.com.
Good morning and welcome to the Growth Mindset Show. My name is Mahesh Chand. Here's another Growth Mindset Show. It's Friday, nice and bright sunny Friday here in Philadelphia. As you can see today, I'm standing, so I changed a little bit my workspace around here in this kind of studio / home office. Now I can stand. So I got me and myself a kind of the stand to put on the table. Now I can talk and stand. So if you are joining us first time, welcome to the show. If you are coming back, welcome back to the show. This Growth Mindset Show is every Friday 10 a.m. And we talk about not coding, not software development, but mostly around how to become better at doing things in software development. So if you are a young developer or you have been writing code for a while, you want to get to the next stage, feel free to ask your questions. We take any kind of questions. So again, this show is all about you. We want to make sure that you get some benefit out of it. Today we have interesting topic, and one of the topic is entitlement, but we are going to go into software development and how, there's three basic topics we are going to cover today. If you are one of the guys or girls who contribute to open source a lot, that's one topic we are going to cover. Second is if you go on a social media and talk about and ask help for people, what is the right way to do that? And then we're also going to talk about, as a software development, if you're writing a content or you are copying code or you're copying articles, how to work around those so you don't copy and publish somebody else's work. In between, we are going to do is take your questions. So any kind of questions you have, feel free to post in comments. I see people are joining from YouTube, Twitter, Facebook. Please share this and let your friends know that this Growth Mindset Show is every Friday 10 a.m. and people can come and ask any kind of questions. So welcome to the show. Today we have two guests, Alan and David. So what we will do is let's bring guests here on the show. Hey guys, good morning, David. Good morning, Alan. Good afternoon, Alan. You're
on mute.
How about
there
that?
You go.
There you are. How's everybody?
I'm good. I think I'm actually looking a bit like a local pastor or a priest or something today.
You are.
Or Santa Claus with black shirt.
Yeah, more like an anti-Santa Claus.
Yeah. David, how are things here in San Diego? I believe it's 7 a.m.
Yep, it's 7 a.m. The sun is coming up, and All of California is still on the lockdown because of the pandemic, and so it's another week of not going anywhere.
Yeah, yeah. And Alan, how about yourself? I think it's afternoon there.
It's afternoon. I don't know if you can hear the barking outside.
I can.
You can, yeah.
A
Okay.
little bit.
Yeah. So it's probably delivery or something outside. So, in all my years of working with IoT and working with big data and servers, electronics and AI, I've never come across a better burglar alarm or house defender than a bloody good dog.
They're the best, right?
So keep it natural.
Yeah, you cannot build the robots for that, huh?
Yeah, well, Boston Robotics, huh?
Well,
See, as a being live things, we have this extra sense, right, which machines can never have. No matter how much AI we build there, they can never have this sense, this connection, this energy with other living things on this planet.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think the other thing people don't realize is, one of the other great things about just having a dog, hopefully a big dog that likes to bite, right? But, when you use a dog over security cameras, for sure there's not some guy in the back end of that company watching your videos, right? Because I used to work for one of those companies and we can see everything you're doing, right?
Yep.
So,
Yep. Yeah. All right, friends, welcome to the show. Today, I want to talk about some different topics and bring something for software developers. And one topic really I want to start with is the software developers are building this new world, right? If you look at anything new being built, it's all about software. Sure, there is hardware already. Hardware companies are building hardware, but software is the one that runs hardware, right? That makes it work, right? So as we say, the software is the soul of technology, right? So, and we are the gatekeepers, we are the creators, we are the builders of this new world, where either you are building a website, you are building an app, you are building an IoT enabled services or anything. So one thing I want to really talk about and basically give our message to these software developers is that when you are building something, don't just go and build because you are bored with your life, right? Sure, we are doing a lot of us, like, I have done that. I'm sure you guys have done that. We build all the time. Okay, let's build something. I'm sitting around, I'm bored with my life. Let's build something. But that's great. Everybody's doing that. But what is happening over time is that we are building so much data, we are storing so much data is going transferring from machine to machine. It's being stored probably in hundreds if not thousands of servers, right? Literally all across the globe. So not only we are creating this big data, or I call it clutter, right? It's no different than you're walking around in a city and throwing the garbage everywhere. We just don't see it.
mhm.
But just because we don't see it, it doesn't mean we are not creating the garbage. It's like,
Sure.
if you look at the space, I was watching other day how much clutter, garbage we are throwing in the space. There's so many unused rockets are flying around, and it's just crazy.
Mhm.
Same thing with the ocean. If you go, underneath, in deep ocean, they're finding so many plastic bottles, hardware, and all the garbage. So we cannot do anything about those things. But as software developers, as the builder of this new world, as the gatekeepers of this new world, at least we developers at least can be responsible for building something useful content out there.
Yeah.
So I want to actually start, one of you, maybe David, you start, and Ellen, you start. What are your thoughts on those? And let's just discuss around those things. And again, guys, anybody, girls and guys, anybody who's joining us, welcome to the show. This is a growth mindset show. It's every Friday, 10 a.m. If you have any questions, comments, you want to chime in the topic we are talking about, please feel free to, add your 2 cents, share your comments. If you agree or disagree, doesn't matter. You can be, disagreeing with us. That's fine. If you disagree, also let us know what you think, because end of the day, we want to, We want to learn what you're thinking, where you're coming from.
Yeah, you're totally right. And while you were talking, and actually, this morning before I joined the show, I've been thinking about this, and quite frank, yeah, I told you before the show that I started my first website actually on Carl Franklin's server in 1994, and thinking back to 1994, and I'm not talking about website design or anything. I'm just talking about content. It was easier to find things back then, right? Because there wasn't so much garbage as you were talking about on the internet. And now, years and, 26 years later or 27 years later, it's so hard to find anything on the internet, right? Because there's just so much garbage. And when you try to search, especially for code, when you try to search for code questions, I spend way too much time weeding out the garbage to find that one, article that is really the one that's helped, right?
Yeah.
And it's horribly frustrating, and put on top of that, at least Google search engine really sucks at finding help for code. When you try to put in code things, it just kind of goes kind of nuts on a lot of it, right? And so, at least for finding answers or finding help, the internet has actually gotten worse at that, in a way, to me. I don't know what Alan thinks.
It's interesting what you said there about Google sucking at finding code. And there's a whole load of stuff here, right? But I find this fascinating because someone said about standards years ago, standards are great, right? We all love international standards because everybody can have their own version of the standard, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we all love coding language and all love writing code because we can all have our own version of the code, right?
Yeah.
And the way that I write something is going to be different to the way that Dave writes something, the way it's different the way that Mahesh writes something. And Dave will come back and he'll look at some of my code and he'll go, geez, man, what are you thinking of? We can optimize this and we can get rid of a whole lot of that stuff, right? We can make this much tighter and everything else. And part of the interesting part there is, even though we made something nice and clean and tighter on the front end of those 2 or 3 lines of code, are we actually incurring some bigger cost behind us?
Yep.
And it's interesting if you even look at the comment that you made earlier on, Mahesh, about growth, right? So we're all about growth, right? And growth is like we grow our mindset and we grow what we're doing and we grow our businesses and we grow our countries.
Bellies and
and of course we grow our bellies if we're Santa Claus like, right? But let's forget about that. What we also do is we grow stuff. So like you were saying there, we grow these extra satellites in the sky and we grow this plastic in the ocean and we grow all this extra code. And do we really need to keep like those millions of photographs that we have on our cloud? Do we really need to keep those? Like I did a really interesting piece of research for a company in the UK recently. And what we did was we wanted to find out how much energy is being wasted by security by default, SSL, right? And we did some experiments around this, and it came back that one of the top 10 websites, and we actually tested the top 500 websites in the world, but one of the top 10 websites alone generates, just using by sending down extra font and stuff and not sharing it on a CDN properly, it generates the equivalent CO2 if you convert it all, right?
Yeah.
As a whole team of sumo wrestlers, right? So a whole lot of guys like me in nappies, right? So the interesting thing is that even though while we might go and we might have this growth mindset of we're going to grow our knowledge, as you said, Mahesh, we've got to be incredibly careful that we don't grow the trashy side as well. We don't grow that stuff that gets to throw away. So even though we have a growth mindset, which is grow ourselves personally and grow our businesses and grow our relationships and everything else, be that relationship with ourselves or with our colleagues, with our family, with a deity, if we're God inclined, whatever. It's really important, yes, to grow those things, but it's also important always to bear in mind, is it the right thing to grow this thing? You know, is it the right thing to do? And one of the outcomes actually of that piece of research that we did was that we said that as engineers and as coders, we have an obligation to ensure that when we develop things, that we don't overdevelop things, and that we take a holistic view, and we don't just look at, is this good for my pocket and for my business, but we say, is this good for humanity, and is this good for the planet, and is it good for the environment? So that's an interesting aspect of growth as well, that when you go to grow, you've got to make sure you're only growing the right things, and you make sure you minimize the growth of the wrong things.
And keep in mind that the open source has helped not recreate so much software, right? And we are not disagreeing with that part, right? So many open source libraries and code samples are there where everybody can go and use it. They don't have to rewrite it. But now there is this new trend where everybody wants to have their own repo on GitHub. Everybody wants to create the project. And what happens is 2 weeks later, they just give up because they're not motivated anywhere more, and they just move on, and that project is just sitting out there now for nobody's really. They're like orphan projects, so many orphan projects left. Literally anybody I talk to, like, yeah, I started GitHub project, you talk 2 weeks later, like, no, there was nobody was coming contributing to it, so I don't, I can't abandon it.
Take it off then.
I want to spend more time on that. So anybody who's listening, and if you are a software developer, think about that what is the purpose of the open source project you're creating? Is there a long-term purpose for that? Is there anything already out there so you don't need to reinvent the wheel because you're bored? Maybe you just become a part of the existing project that's similar, that's doing same thing, and rather than you creating your own, you also help other developers and learn from them.
And that's really interesting, because actually if you go to GitHub and other places like that, and you go to some larger projects, there's a whole area where you can go in and say who's looking for help. And if you say, well, actually, I want to improve my skills in relation to C#, or I want to increase my skills for AI or for Python or CSS or for whatever it is, okay, it doesn't matter. You can go in there and you can filter down, you can say, who's looking for help in these areas, because I want to learn. And there's no better way to learn than to actually jump in and work with people who know more than you. Because if you try and just do stuff from a standing point where, you're just fumbling around, you're not really going to get anywhere. Whereas if you go in, and we've found the most successful ways of learning over the years from an educational and a pedagogical point of view, the most successful way is to do it yourself. So if you go off and you say, oh, here's a toy project, well, it's only a toy project. You're only just going to get so far. The way to actually really learn something, and Mahesh, you know this from all of your teaching and writing and as authoring of books over the years, and likewise Dave and helping people to improve their code. The very best way to learn something is to do something that's hard, not something that's easy, right? Give yourself a challenge, and you're not going to give yourself a challenge if you're going to get demotivated because nobody else is helping you. So why don't you go into an area where there's already some experts in a great big open source thing, and help out there.
Help them.
And they'll very quickly tell you if you're going on the right track or not, and they're most helpful folk. And most importantly, rather than, as Mahesh, you were saying there, oh, well, after 3 weeks or 3 months, nobody was helping out, so I gave up, and it's just there on hold, and if anybody wants it, they can take it, and good luck. Well, that's kind of awful, that all that energy and everything else was wasted. Wouldn't it be far better to say, I wanted to learn something new about CSS or whatever, and I went off and I did this little piece that was quite a challenge, but now it's part of that huge open source project, right? And it's being used, and it's useful, and it's not going to be wasted. So I think that's really a good thing to learn from what you said, Mahesh.
Yeah, and I'd like to kind of, piggyback on top of that, Mahesh said at the beginning of this, is that, to me, if you're going to do anything, whether it's writing an app or writing an open source library or something like that, just be original, right? Don't do the same thing. Don't copy somebody else's code and make a few changes and call it yours, right? And like you said, Alan, that's not learning really, right? So you be original. And I do this all the time. And I've, I don't know how many times I've been in meetings or people have asked me, how, should we do this, thing? And I said, well, Microsoft's got this framework out there that basically does exactly what you're asking. Why don't you try that? No, we can do it better, right? And every time someone has told me that, they did it worse, right?
Yeah.
And I even do that, when people talk to me about their ideas about, like the next big app, right? I say, well, first you should research if there's one already out there that pretty much does what you're thinking, because what's the point, right?
Yep.
And so, I've always, come up with ideas that were original, no one else is doing, right? Even last year, I came up with an idea that I wanted to do and work on with, my favorite team member at work. And I told her, and I did the same thing. And we both researched my idea to see if someone else is doing it, right?
Yeah.
And no one was. So, that project never came to, never even started, but at least that's how we started the idea. Is we're researching something original no one else is doing, because that's really where you make breakthroughs. You don't become a patent inventor like myself by doing something someone else has done. Right?
You'll get lawsuits.
Well, yeah, but you just can't do it, right? And
so Alan, you just mentioned something like do things that's hard to do, right? So if you think about growth mindset, and again, I will go back to Carol's book. Carol has a book here called Growth Mindset. If anybody who has not, interested more about learning growth mindset, she is she's behind the concept called growth mindset. And what's basically her study finds is that in your brain, neurons kind of start new neurons being created in your brain. So your brain is growing, not physically, but like number of neurons, they're active. These are the guys or girls in the brain. They do the work, right? Mm-hmm. They, after a certain age, let's say 17 years or so, they kind of stop slowing down and growth kind of slows down. The older you get, more neurons you lose unless you create new ones, right? So she said that the way to create new neurons is one of the best way to create new neurons, grow your mind. And that's what growth mindset is, to work on the things they are hard, mm-hmm. not the things they are simple, because your brain is now doing more work. Brain has to think more. And good thing about it, once you start doing that, brain gets addicted, and then you want to do even more. You want to solve more problems. That's the whole idea behind this growth mindset is. So that brings my next topic. Next topic is, many of us have been helping other developers for so long, right? Somebody asks, hey, can you help me with helping me with this code? And we just say, okay, here's the code I wrote, right? Other person goes and copies the code and puts in there, and they're done. This is something trend we see again and again and again. You go to Stack Overflow, you go to Google, you go to C# Corner, you search for code, you find code, you copy code and put in it, your application, and you're done with it. Well, that's great, because your goal is that I'm sure your manager is asking you to finish this application by a certain time, and earlier you're done. That's great. That's no problem with that. But to grow your mind, it's very important to understand that code, learn that code, and make sure, is this the right way to do it? There may be a better way to do it. There may be, if you look at C# Corner's history, you can still search and find articles I wrote in 2000 of February that has C# alpha version of code in it. And again, it goes back to the creating this clutter, right? Because now I personally contributed so much to that clutter that's probably not useful anymore, but I just cannot go back and update that. So that's the kind of challenge we are running into. So one simple way all of us can do is, if you copy the code or somebody gave you the code, you at least learn it and make it better. And there's a better way to do that if you plan to use it, right? Because definitely make sure that you are checking with the latest version. If you are copying a C Sharp 2.0 code that was written 20 years ago in C Sharp Corner, guess what? That's probably obsolete. And there's that 20 lines can be now changed in C Sharp 9 with one line. Mm-hmm. Right? So that's one part, is people who are developers who are copying code. Now, second part I want to talk about is the developers who are giving code. That's also a bad thing. And we all know that, giving whatever the phrase is, giving a fish a man can feed him for a day, or teaching him how to fish can feed him for life, right? So that's the idea behind C Sharp Corner has always been. People ask me code all the time. I don't give them code. I've never given a code to anybody. What I did is I end up writing either a small article and then say, hey, go read that. I'm not going to give you the code because I want you to really read that and then go copy the code. Mm-hmm. Now, at least my part is that I kind of try to show him, like, I try to teach them how to fish rather than giving them the fish. So let's talk about these two topics. And again, welcome guys, welcome to the Growth Mindset. So I see some new guys. Rajnikant, welcome back. Sean, Kapil, Deepak, welcome from Canada. We have, Deepak joining us from Canada. He's also our MVP. He was on the show recently. And welcome back, guys. So we are here talking about in Growth Mindset. So today we are talking about how to become a better citizen developer, to build better software, to help others in a better way, and how to, with doing that, how to grow our mind.
Yeah.
So let's talk about those two books: people who are asking for the code and copying the code, and people who are giving the code.
Right. I'd like to talk about a little bit about copying the code, because this has always been a thing to me, and so much so that I've even been at Microsoft, and I jokingly, but truthfully said that, can you disable copy and paste in Visual Studio, please? Because there's just too much of what you were just talking about, right? People just blatantly copy code. They don't understand what it does, right? And and therefore they're not learning, they're not growing, like you were saying, right? And I've just seen this so much where people just blatantly copy stuff. But what I do when I find code online that I think will solve whatever I'm trying to solve, is I copy and I paste it, but then I go through and I .NET Dave-ify it, right, and make it look like .NET Dave would do it. And part of that is looking at it from the user standpoint. How are they going to use it? How are they going to perceive this code that I just put in there, and make sure that it's easily understood. Make sure I understand what's going on with it. And it doesn't matter if I copy just like a block of code or an entire class from somewhere. I go through and I try to understand exactly what it's doing, right? So that's something important that a lot of people miss. And also going back to when I used to teach at the university here, is something that I did to my students on purpose, which I'm not sure if they liked very much. But all of their labs, the 5 labs they had to do for the course, they had to write the code on a piece of paper, right? And I know it irritated them, but I did it for a really good reason. And that is, even if they're copying and pasting it, and if they write it onto the piece of paper, they're actually learning, right?
Yep.
Because they're writing the actual code on a piece of paper, so it has to go through their brain and it has to get them to at least halfway understand it, right? It also made it easier for me to grade stuff, because I could just look at a piece of paper instead of trying to run a program or something like that. But, I did that on purpose to my students, right? And not to be an a-hole, but to teach them, right?
Let me unwrap some things here briefly. First of all, there was a comment that came up there from one of our viewers that was talking about, legal, illegal, not legal, dodgy. That one there, yeah, from Amit. Thanks for raising that, Amit. Right, here's the thing. First of all, when you're learning something, if something is out there and it's in the public domain, I don't mean it's in paste bin, right? I mean that it's legally being put out in the public domain. Go for it. Learn from it. Okay? Use it. However, if you're using something commercially, you're using something to make money, you're using something that is offering to service to people, whether or not it's making money, if it's being used commercially, you must make extremely sure that you're in a solid legal footing. Make sure that if you go on take code or base your work on code that you've found on GitHub or on C# Corner or Stack or Code Project or any place else, that you look at the terms of the license. Is it an MIT license? Is it one of the OSS licenses? Which one is it? And you need to research that, because you can get yourself into a lot of trouble really quickly by doing that. And also, somebody commented there, well, how will you know if my code is in I compile my code, and how do you know I've used your code? Because it's very easy to, number one, decompile and see if the code is in there. And number two, it's very easy to actually look for patterns and signatures in compiled code and compare them to existing code that isn't compiled, and you can get a correlation between the two. This is how, for example, heuristic antivirus discovery works. Okay, so don't think, oh, just because it's compiled I can get away with it. You won't, right? So be careful. Learn from everything, but don't steal. Okay, add back into community. The second thing I wanted to add was, and it goes back to the original thing that Mahesh was talking about the brain. And this gets into the neuroscience part of things, right? And this is important. So I want you to think of your brain like a forest. You're out in the lovely open. It's a beautiful warm day, and you're out in some beautiful fields, and there's maybe some animals roaming, and there's a bit of a forest over there, and you've got some beautiful fields full of flowers or straw or whatever some grasses that you can walk through. And what you'll notice is this is your brain. And what you'll notice is that there's some very, very wide paths through this grass, okay? There's some very distinct paths that have been made through the forest. You can see, oh, I'm here and I want to go over there, and that's a well-trodden path. This is something that you're used to. It's something that you've done frequently, so it's a well-trodden path. It's established. And then if you look around you, you'll notice that there's other small little trails. Maybe something that looks like a rabbit has run through this recently, and they just barely brushed the grass apart, okay? So this is an area that is seldom used. And then sometimes you'll notice in that same distant land that unfurls before you, you'll notice maybe a connection between one or more or two or more of these paths, okay? This is how your brain works. In your brain, something that you do often is a chemical pathway. It's a chemical pathway between two regions of the brain or more. And what happens is the more you do the same thing, the more stronger the connections get in that particular location. If you don't learn new things, you don't create new paths in the forest. You don't create these little rabbit walks. And by going out and learning new things, you create these new little rabbit paths. And what you do is you gradually, as you learn and as this thing gets stronger in your brain, you make those paths bigger and bigger and bigger. And this is how you learn new things, because you do exactly what Mahesh said. You challenge yourself to do something different. You go a different path because you're actually chemically opening a new neural pathway in your mind. This is what you're doing. And this is the scientific basis for it. So it's critically important that you don't just do what you always do. You learn something new. You read something that is not inside your sphere of knowledge. You learn a new musical instrument. You learn a new skill. You go and do something that you would never normally do. You talk about something you would never talk about. You watch something on TV you would never talk about, but do something different. Because what you will find over time is that all of these paths will start actually connecting up. And that's when the
Yep.
real magic of creativity and growth actually happens, is when those new little neuronic pathways all start to join up.
Yep, well said.
Yeah.
I think that's exactly, you put it right way. Is that very important? You can learn anything. It doesn't have to be coding. It can be any skill you learn where you have to think, and that's really how you broaden your your mind, pretty
Mhm.
much your brain, and that's the whole idea. Is that if you just copy and paste, and you said well, um, copy paste is fine. You can copy paste for learning purposes, as you said. Just to recap, but yeah, I agree. You can get in legal trouble. So anybody who copies and pastes and take that code and put in a client project or their own commercial project where you're making money from, you can definitely. And I've seen in definitely some cases where companies and people got in legal trouble. So make sure you look for the license and understand the license. Don't just say, okay, this is whatever MIT license, it should be fine. Go really look at. Also, some projects owners have put their own files or comments. Say, hey, if you want to copy this, you have to give me credit, or you want to copy this, you cannot sell it. So it's very important. If you are, and I see many guys, if you're working on client projects, you may, if you have not gotten, you may get in trouble without reviewing these licenses. So it's very important to go and check those licenses.
Here's a
Yeah.
simple license. I allow you to copy my code. I allow you to use my code commercially. I allow you to make money from my code. And I do not want any of that money, and I want nothing back, except you must send me sufficient funds through this particular link to buy a cup of coffee in 30 days. If you
Yeah.
don't send me that link to buy a cup of coffee within 30 days, well, then you must give me 10% of the gross profits of everything you make for the next 10 years.
Yeah.
Is
That's
that is that like the Allen O'Neil license? Is that what you call it?
Yeah, it's actually perfectly legal. That's a
Yeah.
perfectly legal license. And if you say, yeah, I'll send him the coffee sometime, right? On day 31, I can contact you and say, hey, dude, I don't want the coffee anymore. I want the money.
10%. Yep. Yep. Yeah.
I've also oh,
Yeah, go ahead. I
I
want
just
to
want
add one more thing. I want to, talk, recap kind of, that it's very easy to find out who has copied my code. It's
to.
not really hard to find out. If any of you guys thinking like, oh, I copied the code, it's in my projects, compile as a DLL or EXE, how would he find out? Don't even think about that. So yes, there is easy way to find out. Go ahead, David, please.
Yeah, the other thing I want to say to kind of piggyback again on what Alan said is that, and you too, is that you should always be challenging yourself. One of the reasons I love software engineering is because I can't learn everything. Every day I learn something, right? Same thing with playing guitar. I can't learn every song, right? I can't play like Steve Vai, so I'm always striving, to be better at that. But then the other thing is, if I look back on my career, I've purposely did things that challenged me dramatically, right? Like there are a lot of classes that I taught at the university that I signed up to teach that I didn't even know the subject, right?
Yeah.
And that challenged me to learn it, because if I'm going to stand in front of 30 students, I better halfway know what I'm talking about, right? And so the same thing with apps. I build apps that challenge myself because I know everybody learns a different way. Some people like going to classes. Some people like reading books. I've always learned best by doing, right? And so for me to learn, I have to challenge myself to do something I've never done, right? And that's
Yep.
what gets me up in the morning, basically.
Yep. All right, guys and girls. Looks like we have new people joined. Welcome, Amit. Good comments. Definitely very good feedback and comment. Harish, welcome to the show. Everybody, welcome to the show. I see some good and some comments as well. Jin, Welcome to the show. I know you are. I see you all the time on C Sharp Corner and social media. So we are going to take a 2 minute break, and when we come back in the second half of the show, in last 20 minutes or so, we are going to talk about social media, how you ask for help on social media when people are sending me and sending you messages like, hey, I need help. How do you ask help for social media, and what are the do's and don'ts? And anything also I want to really bring back to the social media. What do you post on social media? And think about the purpose. Why are you posting that? Just because you're bored and you got this fancy camera that takes 4K photos and videos, and now you can just go around your bathroom in your home and just start putting on your Facebook. What's the purpose behind it? So when we come back in 2 minutes, we'll be right back. We'll talk about these two topics.
Just before we go as well,
Here at Mindcracker, we create artificial, virtual, and mixed reality games and apps, voice-enabled skills and apps, and intelligent apps, and integrate AI with IoT products. We offer advisory services for innovations and startups. We provide cloud and code security and performance services. We also offer AI/ML blockchain development, consulting, and training. Just visit www.mindcracker.us to make your dreams into a reality. COVID makes us feel like this, and work from home like this. But what if work looked like this? With a leader like this, and a payday that feels like this. Learn how to change your mind and your mindset with the Growth Mindset Show every Friday at 10 a.m. Eastern.
Welcome back to the show. And we are back. And I think, Alan, sorry, you were saying something.
I'm joking.
No, you were saying something before Simon cut you off.
Absolutely. I was just going to comment there on something that Sean Patrick Franklin had said about the concept of copyright for code. And it's an area that I know a lot about because in addition to engineering, I also have a background in IT law. So I've got some qualifications there as well, just because I could. And it's an interesting area. We should probably do a show on it, just on the whole legal end of things, because it's important to know as well.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, when a company gets into trouble in relation to code and copyright and database breaches and security breaches and everything else, who gets into trouble? Is it the business guys or is it the developers? The developers, right? So we should be cognizant of that. Anyway, what I'm simply going to say, Sean, is that, yeah, absolutely, great comment. Actually, code is treated the same way as writing a novel. So if I go and I write a novel, I've got copyright on the way that I put those words together. And code is the same way. I've got copyright on the way I put the lines or the words or the tokens of code and the syntax together. So you can have copyright on it. It is a gray area. However, there are all sorts of interesting bits of case law. The most important thing is that you can show that what you're doing is substantively different than somebody else in the whole context. In other words, if you went out and you found yourself with a copy of the code base for Microsoft Word, and you went and just went copy and paste, now it's called Alan Word, right? Well, bang, straight to jail. On the other hand, if I went in there and I looked at that and I improved it and I came up with a better way and more efficient way of doing it and everything else, it's not the same code. I've changed it substantively. So the concept of copyright and patent is good. It is something I fought against myself for a long time, but I actually now see how it can be used to protect open source in actual fact, right? And it's a very interesting debate. So it's something we might talk about at a later show.
Yeah, I think we will do is a one dedicated show just on this, how to copyright, patent, and take legal precautions around the copying code or creating code. Yeah, that'll be good topic to have. So, folks, we're gonna talk about two topics now. One is, let's start with this And I get this all these messages. I'm sure you both get same messages. You get this message on LinkedIn, like, "Hey, I need help. Can you help me with this?" Or you get message on Twitter, and I'm definitely not on Facebook, so I stay away from that part. And then, obviously, I don't reply because once in a while I go to LinkedIn and check my messages. There's so many messages. Then you'll get right away. There's another comment if you don't reply them right away. Is, "Oh, you're not replying me," and then they start blasting you, start saying bad things, and so on and so forth. So I want to talk more about that. What's your guys, both of you spend your insight on that, and advise the young guys, guys and girls who are watching the show, what's the best way to do that?
If you keep asking somebody for something over and over and over again, and they're already a person that gives and gives a lot, and you start to really annoy them, you're gonna turn them off helping at all. Okay, you're gonna sour it for everybody. If you're the type of person who is going to get so mad and so angry at somebody in the open, that you're just asking for this assistance, and for whatever reasons in their life and in their mind, they can't help you out, or they're not willing to, or they couldn't, like, no time or whatever. That's not their problem. It's your problem. And if you're going off and you're going to badmouth them and create a scene and everything else, the first question I'd ask is, are you on drugs? And the second question I'd say is, if you're not on drugs, you probably should be on drugs. In other words, there's always going to be somebody out there who's a little bit messed up, and they get angry because they think the world revolves around them. Okay, guess what? The world doesn't revolve around you as a person. It revolves around the world, and we're just shining a tiny, tiny, tiny drop in the world. And if somebody stands up like we're doing here now to help folk out and to talk, and if you guys are good enough to listen to us and to learn from us and hopefully share that then on to others, you don't expect somebody to come up and start shouting it down and being nasty and everything else. And if I make a mistake about something, I'll be the first one to say, "Hey, I apologize," and I'll learn from what I should do, and I'll do it right the next time. But it is absolutely not right to go and attack somebody for no reason other than the fact that you didn't get what you wanted. Because guess what? You're like a 3-year-old toddler. Okay. So my own personal experience is, I have had some people who do that, and I just switch them off. I recently had somebody come to me and say, "Look, will you be my mentor for this, this, and this?" And I said, "Look, I'd love to, but I really don't have the time." And they came back a second time and said, "Yeah, but I really need the help, and you're the only one I can think of who'll get." I know, I appreciate that, but I don't have the time. I have my own life to live, and you're responsible for your life. I'm not responsible for your life. So if I can't help you, I'll go and find the next best person. So I think once you start helping people in the open, once you start sharing your knowledge, you are opening yourself up, of course, to both the good and the bad that we have in society. It's easy to say, develop a thick neck or a thick skin. It's easy for me to say. And it does affect a lot of people when some folk aren't as nice as they should be. But I think that if we stand up and we say, "This is what I give, this is all I can give, I'm not able to give any more," well, that's it. We shouldn't expect people to allow themselves to be sucked for information fully. If I decide to give something, that's what I decide to give, and that's it. I can't give any more. So it's really your responsibility then to work out how you're going to get to the next level that you want to get to in your growth journey. But I'm not responsible for that. So, if you go and you get angry because somebody doesn't help you, that's not their fault. It's your fault. You're the one who makes yourself angry, not the other person.
Yes.
Yeah, that's so true. And I get these messages like you guys have been talking about, Mahesh has been talking about quite often, and usually the negative, the real demanding ones come through LinkedIn. And one of the reasons I don't check my messages in LinkedIn much anymore, because it's either those people or recruiters, and but I think it's
What's the difference, Dave?
recruiters are worse. No, I'm kidding. But I think it's important to understand the human nature, and let me give you an example. Like, I get those questions all the time, and the real demanding ones is, you must help me with this project now. Of course, I completely ignore. I'm not going to respond to somebody like that. But on the other hand, there's one of my followers on Facebook that has been following me for a long time, and the reason that I think about her is because every holiday she records a song in Indian, and like a happy holiday song or whatever. She records it, puts it on Facebook for me to listen to on these special days, right? So she's, therefore she has created a communication line with me, right? Because she does these things, and I feel very lucky to have somebody out there that likes me enough to sing a song for me, but so it was literally yesterday, she said, "Hey, can we talk?" And I said, "Okay, what's up?" And she said, I want to get my brother into some kind of training or school in America. Can you help me with that? And I wrote back to her and I said, I'd love to help you, but I have absolutely no idea how to do that, right? And so I feel that I wouldn't be much help to you. And then she graciously said, "Okay, thank you very much, for your time," and over and out, right? And so that was a good experience of somebody accepting that either I don't have time or I just don't know, right? And being nice about it. But when you keep demanding, I get messages on LinkedIn like, "Dave, are you there? Dave, are you there? Dave, are you there?" And I'm going, "Yes, I am, but I'm not talking to you."
Yeah. So, and often these messages come from young people, young folks, who are just either joining the industry, and most of them, they have obviously their project priority, or they have a lot of time. So, message to everybody, those guys, if you're sending somebody message and you're not getting response, is that we all are so busy in our lives. Okay, we have probably companies running, we have families, and we have helping other things, and so on and so forth. Some of them may, we may be, in a hospital, whatever, but we give to the community our certain time every day or every week or every month. That's all we have. And just because we are not replying you right away, it doesn't mean we don't want to help. It's just we don't have time. We have limited time. There's so many other priorities. Community service is just when we feel like, we have extra time and we give back. So anybody you're watching and you get upset because somebody didn't just reply you, well, guess what? It's not that, because there's just so much work. So maybe you go find somebody else, as Alan said, because there's so many other people can help you. Do your own research, right? So that's the right way to do that. So
it's also the case that here's something interesting. If you give, you will get something back.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yes.
So rather than just take all the time, give something back. So if you go and you say, "Okay, I actually know some stuff here. I'm going to write an article. I'm going to maybe I'm going to go and I'm going to do what Mahesh said. I'm going to go to some of Mahesh's old articles, and I'm going to have a look at them, and I'm going to update them. Wow, that's an interesting thing. And I can bring it from, an older version of C# up to the new version to show how, some syntax has changed or something, whatever. And then I might go back to him and say, "Hey, Mahesh, I noticed this here, and I've got an update that if you want to post it and push it. Oh, and by the way, I have this little problem here. If you have a couple of minutes, would you be able to help me out?" I would be so willing to help you if you did that for me.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Right? So give and take. Don't take all the time. Give and take.
Yeah.
It's a really good thing. It's how the world works.
Yeah, and sometimes you said it right. Sometimes, I'm following somebody on Twitter and I write in comments on certain things they do. And then you ask questions, they're probably more likely to reply you. Because now you kind of build this communication, as David said. you have built a little channel there. At least they kind of watching you who you are, so they are more willing to give you the answer. All right, so we have a couple of, let's take some questions here. We have 5 minutes left. So Nitin has a question here, and that's for you, Alan. Um,
Who is ultimately responsible for the
That's
code
tough.
that accomplishes something unethical? The person who deploys the code. And that does not mean your DevOps guy who presses the button. It is the person who says this can go and get deployed, right?
it's usually developers, right? So developers who are
Usually,
writing the
yeah. But this is also the case. You got to be very. And whenever I talk about AI to engineers, I always say, look, guys, the business folk are not the most powerful people in the room. You are. Never forget that. Never forget that. Because if you decide not to write a line of code, guess what? They can't make money, right? So if somebody's asking you to do something unethical, don't do it. Don't be the guy who goes off and takes that piece of facial recognition code off GitHub someplace and links it in with that piece of pathway finding code and then puts it together with a bit of spatial simultaneous location and mapping, and suddenly you've got a drone that can follow people around a building and actually blow up a little package explosive. Don't be that guy. That's unethical, okay? So don't be the person responsible for doing that. The person who puts together, knowing what the end result is going to be, that's the person who is responsible.
Yeah.
Yep. And then we have another question from Deepak here. Let's take one more question here. So Deepak, I can answer this question. Good question. Very good question. This growth mindset is a good topic. Do we also consider team spirit, empathy, compassion? So answer is yes. The growth mindset is all about these non-coding issues in software development, and each week it's a different topic. If you go back to if you go to our growth mindset show on C Sharp Corner, there are different topics each week. And this week was, we had a guest. Our topic was entitlement, how this young generation feel entitled to getting everything without working hard, especially say, kids who are, teenagers now. They feel like everything should come to them, and thanks to this social media, their brain works this way. It's hard to blame them. So our topic today was this, but unfortunately we didn't have guests, so then we kind of mix these topics up. Before we close this, we have a few minutes left. I want to also talk about one thing. I want to spend a couple of minutes is when creating a content. Creating content is including taking pictures, taking videos, uploading on social media. It's very important to think about the purpose rather than TikToking something and putting dance and just putting on the social media, uploading and be happy about it. I understand that we are bored, we need to do something, that's great, but it's not helping anybody. So you want to spend a little time on those, 1 minute each.
Alan?
Yeah, at the end of the day, if you do something, do it for the right reasons, okay? So if you want to go on TikTok, go on TikTok. Look at this here, look. I'm sure some people take that and put it down.
Stop.
Santa Claus from Ireland who looks like some kind of weird TikTok guy, right? Okay, but that's cool. But are you actually doing something to benefit? If you're just going to give a laugh, that's great. If that's your intention, that's great, right? But otherwise, you should always strive. And again, it comes back to the growth mindset. You should always strive to not only, and this also goes back to what Deepak said, which is really important. Don't just strive to grow yourself. Strive to grow others around you. Strive to grow your community. When we work in a team, one of the things I've learned is whenever folk come to me and they ask me these questions, and I start noticing the same type of question coming up again, what I do is I say stop, and I call a quick group team meeting, and I say, guys, so-and-so has asked this question here. I'm going to talk you through my answer so you know my way of thinking about this. So now they learn from this here, and I'm sharing my growth because I'm allowing them to grow by giving them the wisdom of my knowledge and allowing them to lift it up as well. Okay. So from this point of view here, it's incredibly important to always make sure that anything that you're doing is for growth. Now, if you're just doing it for growth of humor, that's okay as well. Okay, but make sure that you have a specific goal in mind. Don't just add trash to the pile to bring us right back 60 minutes ago.
Yeah, and it's, to me, it gets back to being original, right? And
this is a reminder.
Sorry, I forgot to turn Alexa off.
Look for job until 9 a.m.
It's telling me to look for a job. But, the whole thing, is going back to being original, because
this is a reminder.
You have to do something
look
original
for job
that
until 9 a.m.
no one else has done to stand out in the crowd. There's so many developers now as opposed to when I started, right? You have to do things to stand out if you want to keep growing and going and getting a better and better salary. I mean, some people are okay learning a certain amount and that's it, right? And they just stop there, and that's the way they live the rest of their career. But, people like myself and you guys, we aren't like that. We always want to grow, be better, be original, do something different somebody else hasn't done. And that's how you stand out, right? I don't, when I speak at conferences, I wear the rock and roll gear and stuff, right? I don't do that. I do that to stand out and to get people to pay attention to me and at least listen for the hour that I'm in front of them, because, conferences are incredibly hard to get people to pay attention, right?
Yeah.
So,
And
I don't do that because I like wearing that. It's actually a real pain in the butt to do that, right? There's a lot of orchestration that has to happen for me to do that. And I'd rather not do it, but I do it for a reason, a specific reason, to stand out and get people to pay attention.
All right, well said, gents, both of you. Thank you so much for coming to the show. With this, I think we're gonna, it's already time. We're gonna end our show. And again, thank you both you coming up on short notice. Really, really appreciate it, and I'm sure a ton of folks are getting benefit from your wisdom here. So everybody who's watching this show, Growth Mindset, is every Friday. We bring different topics. If you have any topic in mind, we will cover that. Just let us know in comments. If you think any of your friends, coworkers, anybody can benefit from the show, please let them know. And also share on social media. Help us make it big. Thank you so much, and everybody enjoy the weekend.
Wait, can I get 1 second more?
Yep.
Yesterday, my new book came out.
So, whoa, congratulations.
This is a proof copy of my brand new coding standards book. It's heavy. It's the biggest book I've ever published on my own ever. And it's got 130 new pages of data from last year. So this book has basically tripled in size in 1 year. So anyway.
And I believe it covers .NET 5.
Yes, the whole book is targeted to .NET 5. And it just yesterday, it's now available on Amazon. So,
all right, guys, everybody, go ahead, go start buying the book and help David, get something out of this hard work.
And here yesterday, I launched my new Pluralsight course as well. So go and look for Allen O'Neil on Pluralsight again. Woo!
Yeah, congratulations! I saw that on social media. Yeah.
Cool.
Congratulations, both of you.
Thanks for the invite, guys. Looking forward to the next.
Yeah,
thank you all. Thank you all. Thank you, and see you next week, next Friday, 10 a.m. Eastern.